Welcome to this episode of Dictate the Tempo. My name is Paul, also known as the Northman, and I'm joined by my co-host, and some would say the more beautiful of the two, Colin. How are you today, Colin?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, I hear you are delighted for the podcast because you are so busy working away at home that you just needed a break, so you wanted to talk to me.
It was well timed. It was definitely well timed.
I like to claim that this is all planned, but I've just been very busy at home, and I honestly don't think I could survive till our normal recording time, which is in 1 hour. So, thought we'd better get out the
It
way
worked out
early.
better.
We need to produce high quality audio for our listeners, Colin. We need to have our T's and our S's at their best.
Well, hopefully this is better. I've tweaked around my setup a little bit.
It does sound a bit more clearer, to be honest with you. I'm going to just turn your volume up a little bit on my setting because
Okay.
it's clearer and very crisp. See that? That was one of our
Hey,
S's and P's and stuff. So,
Christmas.
now, hopefully people have looked at the thumbnail if you are watching on the YouTubes, because I have gone on ChatGPT. I have typed that we are doing a podcast episode where we are going to reminisce on our old football manager and a championship manager save I want to discuss, Colin. And
Okay.
ChatGPT has created the thumbnail. Some might say that's lazy of me, but when you look back at the podcasts, they don't even have thumbnails normally. So, if anything, this is a step in the right direction. Development.
Well, we are advancing our skill set.
Welcome to 2025. So, we've just welcomed people to 2025, Colin. I'm now going to go back in time because the first save I want to tell you about is a save from the year 2001. So this save, it sticks. You know when you have a save con that just sticks in your mind? But
Absolutely.
weirdly, it sticks with the start of the story being somebody else's save, if this makes sense. Actually, there's two saves from back then, but we have time. So the first save is I was very lucky that my form teacher, I'm not sure what you would call that in America, Colin. Basically, when you go to school, you register you are present and you have a teacher who's basically in control of your group, but he doesn't take you for all your subjects. I don't know, like
I
our
don't think
don't really know what it's
it's
called.
not a.
Not
Yeah, I mean, not a. Yeah, I
sorry,
guess.
Colin. Disappointed. I don't know.
If
He was called my form teacher anyway. He was called Mr. Jackson, and he loved Championship Manager. And do you remember the old
okay.
printers where you had to hold paper down the sides, and then when you printed off, you then peel off that paper from either side of it. So you had an A4 sheet of paper, and down both sides was like a strip of holes, which the printer used to almost like feed it through.
Yes, the old dot matrix. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, so he would come in every single one with a printout of his team from his playing of Football Manager or Championship Manager back in the day. And he would always start as Sunderland, which I always abused him, being a Newcastle fan. And he would
As well you
always.
should.
I feel like it was part of the rules. But he would always add, before he started a save, Rio Ferdinand into his team. I don't know why. He just always would do it. Um,
Why not?
but he would always tell me it was so because on the old games he was very good at passing the ball and he wanted somebody to play out. So I said
Are we
to
talking
him,
about the same Rio Ferdinand?
he was a good ball playing defender, to be fair, though, Rio Ferdinand. Back in the day, compared to the other defenders of that time, he was very good with the ball, I would say, to be fair. But I
Okay,
then
I'll give
thought
you
to
that.
myself, okay, I wanted to create a ball playing team in Football Manager, Championship Manager back in the day. And I did a save back then. I did 6 seasons, which was long for what would I have been in 2021. Sorry, 2001. I would have been 13 or 14. So 6 seasons. It's quite long for an attention span of ADHD 14-year-old. Fair play to me, to be fair. Boss that. I manage Barcelona, and I set myself the basic thing of never playing with a defender in the team. So I played the whole 6 seasons with Xavi as one of my back two, and we were dominating the ball. And I always remember that. And this one of these things, if you say, "What did you win?" I was like, I can't remember. But it sticks in my head. The style of play I was trying to piece together on, it would have been CM or 01. I think it must have been back then, not 01 or 02. I think it was before that. But
Okay.
playing Xavi in central defence, after 6 years, he still wasn't even remotely able to play central defence as well, which I always found amusing. But that kind of thing just sticks. And also back then, I don't know, did you ever play the old Championship Managers, Colin, or not?
No, that is way before my time.
So, back in the day, you had to insert the disc to load the game, okay? So, me and
Mhm.
my friend Charles, who I still speak to, he used to play the game as well, but we only had one copy of the game. He lived about 800 metres from my house. So, I would fire up my Championship Manager, and as soon as the game was loaded, I would take the disc out, run over to his house, and load it up at his house so he could then play the game. Yep, that's right. I mean, now you think about it, that's like losing them a sale, isn't it? Well, we were like 13.
Probably a little.
Get over it.
Yeah,
Um, so we used to do that,
I'm
but
not
then
sure it's affecting their bottom line today.
no, but we also used to do every Saturday morning. We would meet up and do like a no, was it? Yeah, it was Saturday morning because Sunday morning I played football. Every Saturday morning we used to meet up and do a two-player game. I was Darlington, our local club, and he was Mansfield, and we would play it religiously every single Saturday, and just like see how far up we could get. Both of us ended up getting to what is now the championship, and just them kind of memories growing up, Colin, are just ones that stick in your mind. Whenever I see Mansfield now, the first thing I think of is them saves back then. So I
Yeah.
guess, firstly, anybody listening, do you have that kind of save where the success, the final destination, and not exactly the thought process you think of when you think of the save, but it's just memories? Like, what would you say, Colin, when you first fired Football Manager up? Do you have a save like that where you maybe didn't achieve anything, but that save is just in your head?
So I'll say, uh, I bought it. FM12 would be the first that I bought, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I fumbled around and fumbled around and fumbled around, and I liked the idea. I started doing some banging around on the internet, and I liked the idea of this like lower league thing. Although at the time I didn't really understand a ton about the European pyramids and all that. Like, I mean, at that stage I was 2012. So let's see, what am I? God, 2012. So I was in like the early 30s. Yeah. I mean, longtime MLS fan. I've been watching MLS since the league started in mid 90s. Um, Champions League stuff was on, and I would say like European stuff was becoming somewhat more prevalent at that point. So I was consuming more on it. So I got into it, and I started with Billericay Town, and I had no idea what I was doing. I will readily admit, totally chose them because I thought the logo was pretty cool, the ship. Um, so I fumbled around. That's actually oddly enough where I found you. So I got in with that was when I got into FM Central on Facebook and was asking questions and started posting pretty regularly. Um, I think I got to like League One, League Two, or League One. I got into the league system that far. I remember. I don't think I didn't make it anywhere any more useful than that before the cycle ended. And actually, it was you had convinced me that once I kind of hit a wall and wasn't sure what to do, and you had suggested trying going to Scotland and trying something different. And that's actually where I found Montrose, which is probably one of my favorite saves.
Why did
So at
you
the time that was. Hmm?
did you go to Montrose because of James from the Whiz Kids being from Montrose, or was it just a very big coincidence at that point? Because obviously
It was
James was
a
very in and
it,
around us at that point, wasn't he?
yeah, no, it ended up being a coincidence. So you we were talking about where to go, and you had recommended them because they had, at least at the time, for a lower league club, had pretty good facilities. So I said, yeah, what the heck. And then we started talking about it, and it turns out actually if somebody that I knew local was from had emigrated from Montrose to the US. So got in a little bit there, and then obviously with James and the Whiz Kids we were talking about it. So then I got more and more in on it, and ultimately, when we got to the Scottish Premier League, never really dethroned Celtic. Kind of got, like Europa League level. This was, God, FM 13, FM 14. Um, in those kind of mixes. So like that, those were pretty good. I went through a period, I'll say, yeah, nothing really stuck, right? I messed around in MLS, that didn't really stick. That wasn't super interesting. Played around with a bunch of other lower league junk. None of that really stuck. Um, it wasn't until we decided to do our race for the top, right, to see between FC United and Manchester and Truro City to see who could get to the Premier League faster. That was a ton of fun. And that one was one I revisited last year just to finish the job on that because the cycle ended before we could finish it. Um, Played around a lot with the New Saints. I don't know. That's less compelling thing that stuck with me as opposed to a bit of a white whale. Trying to take something real low, um, and really make it work. I will say probably the save that I enjoyed the most, that was just super challenging, really, really, really tested my ability to recruit, to get the most out of a side, to prep for matches, was 2020. So when the lockdowns first hit for COVID here, I went back to Billy Ricky Town, and I kind of ran through that in a couple of months. Um, and I said, you know what, I really want to push myself. I'm going to try something that I didn't think I could do. So I took over FC Santa Coloma in Andorra, and it took me 21 seasons. I played from like July till the end of October, and it was pretty much every day, most of the day, because at the time in the job I was working at, I spent almost all my time just sitting in sort of meetings, getting project updates, making decisions, and that. So I would have, and we were all working from home, so I would sit with Football Manager up on my computer while I was sitting in all my meetings and playing.
Hey Colin,
Um,
what do you think of this idea, Colin? Yeah, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm
I
busy.
was somewhat more engaged, but some days not as much. But yeah, 21 seasons. We ended up beating Manchester United for the Champions League, and that was probably the most satisfying save end that I've had in all of my FM.
I find it fascinating and astonishing that in 21 seasons you took a team from Gibraltar to the Champions League, to winning the Champions
Andorra.
League. Sorry, from Andorra. But you did it with Gibraltar as well, a team in Gibraltar as well, didn't you?
I did Europa FC. I got him. I didn't. Did we win? I'd have to look.
You would.
In last year's,
So sure you won the
I
Champions
think I
League with
did.
them. I'm sure
I
you
think
did.
so.
Like
Yeah, that was Europa
when I
FC.
think of your saves, I have to say them kind of saves are what I would say almost define your legacy when it comes to, if someone said explain the type of save or type of journey Colin's famous for. I would say them tiny, tiny nations with a tiny club. Like it was that save that inspired AB, if you remember. When I
Yeah,
decided I
yeah, yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to go to the Faroe Islands, I said, if I can remotely emulate what you have achieved with these small nations. Now,
There.
do you know, I've done the dreaded thing today of watching back my old content to try to reminisce and
Oh,
ready for this.
yeah.
All I can say is I sincerely apologize to anyone who followed my series stuff in the past, and I hope that my content's better now. I'll tell you what, Colin. I'll send you the link after we've recorded to my end of the AB journey in FM23. Now, in terms of my
Okay.
presenting skills, much better. But oh my days, did I need a shave? Oh my days! Honestly, I sent a video to my wife. I videoed my screen, and I just said, "Look at the beard on that." Um, but going
Oh.
back to your save first, I want to talk about
Mm,
your stuff before we jump across, and I don't want us to be
mhm,
bouncing all over. We go back to Sandora then. So
mhm.
why why did you decide? Because, like you said, you went to Billericay, you didn't really know anything about the league systems in Europe to that detail. You then, within a couple of years, decide to yourself that you're going to go to Andorra, a custom league. So, first off, not even
Mhm.
just a bog standard league, you've ended up having to get a custom database to do this. What was your
Yes.
process behind it? What was your thinking? Was it I want to go to a place where I don't know any players and I don't have affiliation to specific players, or what were you thinking behind going with Andorra and not, for example, Iceland, like a playable league, for example?
Uh, some of it was certain of those smaller leagues I just didn't really know, and some of it I felt like it was played out a little. So, like at the time, um, I remember like Northern Ireland was a big thing. Like people, like there was a bunch of there was a rash of people playing like Linfield and some of those and kind of doing it. And I was like, like I get that it's kind of the same, but not. And I knew, I was kind of into Spanish soccer a little bit at the time. Just we get a lot of Liga MX here in the US, and I'm a prodigious consumer of um, the Mexican top flight. There's some, if you haven't ever watched, by the way, some absolutely phenomenal play
I've never
in the
watched
top
a game
flight.
of Mexican football ever.
It's so for your delicate European sensibilities, it's probably going to be a little bit more physical of a game than you're used to.
Here we go.
Um,
There's no
but
need, Colin.
the
There's no need.
but technically it's at a pretty high level. I mean, the Mexican national team obviously isn't exactly what it used to be, but still the league is very, very good. Um, but a big pathway, right? Because La Liga has relatively loose um like foreign player registration and things like that. So um La Liga is a big pathway for Mexican players. So at the time I was, as I was watching more of that and seeing the pathway from, Chivas and Club America and Pachuca and some Monterrey and some of the big guys into Europe. They were going through Spain, and then Chucky Lozano, as kind of one of the bigger ones. In he went to the Netherlands, but a lot of guys go into Spain. And I kind of tripped a little into it, and I started doing some research on like obscure, like super obscure leagues. Because to your point, like I really love the challenge of it because there's nothing there, and I don't, I could have gone with any of them. Some of it was, the badge. Some of it was just, the story of the club founding, as much as I could find. Um, that one sealed the deal because I was able to get a scarf from the club. I have a closet full of scarf. So as I play teams I've played over my entire FM career, if I feel like I've had any kind of a connection to it, I try and get the scarf. So I have an entire closet full of all kinds of crazy scarves.
How to keep the
And
wife
FC
happy.
and FC Santa Coloma happened to be the only one in Andorra that I could get a scarf shipped to the US on. So that they sort of won that one almost a little by default. Um, it was totally like I love the tactical challenge of it all. I'll say like I'm a tactic wonk. Um, like I care, like training, yeah, it doesn't do it for me. All the like I don't like transfer stuff. If I could just like convincingly in the game just say like this is exactly the type of player I'm looking for, and then the game would just go find them for me and take care of all of that, and then I just worried about what's going on the field, it would probably be my most enjoyable football manager experience. But
Oh, I'm
because you can't
shaking
do that,
thinking about it. Shame on you,
because I
Colin.
can't do that. Not a big guy like scouting and all the scouting detail. I mean, we used to have lengthy conversations because you were a scouting nut and all of that depth. The financial stuff, like as long my whole deal was as long as I can get the club to the top and be winning fast enough, like the money take care of itself. Um, right, wrong, or otherwise. But I got into it as a way to just say like, how much do I really understand about it, and can I get a team who, for enormous periods of time, was just going to be woefully under skilled at the continental level, and figure out how to get just enough guys in and develop enough guys to get them into the top flight. Now, I wasn't all hung up on trying to do anything with like specifically Andorran players because honestly, at the time, youth development, all that kind of stuff, and internal youth development wasn't really a big part of what I liked or any of my thinking on it. So I was bringing in Spanish players, South Americans. I went on the usual sort of wonder kid run towards the tail end when we got big enough and good enough. Um, but it took me 8 seasons to get into the Champions League group stage. And that was that moment. I was thinking, we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. Um, I was bumming around on, I think, Instagram, just watching videos, and um, the Manchester City title win from when Aguero scored that stoppage time goal and they beat United, was it by a point or whatever, for the title on the last day. Video came through and just the energy, and then the other one was the was it Leicester and Wolves back when, or no, Watford rather, when Watford was sponsored by Football Manager. It was the championship playoff with the
Ah,
penalty save that turned
yeah.
into the Troy Deeney goal, and I was thinking a bit about like those, like when we were talking nostalgia, like those moments. I was like, have I ever had a save where like you had like that moment where it was just absolutely like epic, and um the first run into when we got into the Champions League with Santa Coloma was a bit like that. It was like, I mean, it was just scrappy all the way. You get to the playoffs, you're punching way above your weight class at that point, and we went in. I think it was like 2-1 or something on aggregate. It was I was looking at it before. I mean, it was super super tight. A super tense defensive, getting battered all day, and you just absolutely figure out how to steal one, which was pretty cool. And then when we eventually beat United, the final, I was looking around and we won like 1-0. And again, that was another one of those like late winners that save had those kind of moments, which is why it sticks so much in my head, of like those just wild moments.
I think it's just think it's insane to think that it only took you 8 seasons, firstly, to get to the group stages. For example, them kind of rises just show that the tactical genius you put together in that save in that journey.
And a heck
Um,
of a lucky draw too, I'm sure.
well, didn't want to say it. Didn't want to say it.
I will readily admit that I'm sure I had to have gotten a favorable draw, but
Now, You're still playing with you're doing a save currently this year where you're almost trying to do one of the most famous football manager CNCs, club and country rises. And you are doing it just
I
with the
am.
club at the minute. Obviously, there's a chance you'll take the national team job as well, maybe.
When I get there, yeah, because I don't. I think it's going to be the only way to actually pull it off. So I'm playing with Victor San Marino, trying to do the San Marino save. So I guess I'm doing a little of my twist. So I'm not doing the San Marino League because to a certain extent, the more I looked at it and kind of thought about it, it patterns a whole lot with kind of what I did in Andorra, right? Is that you have to crawl your way up to getting solid enough that you can start basically, snag your kind of wonder kids. And then once you kind of get there, you can get them San Marini. I think it's like 3 years or something like that for San Marini's citizenship. So you can basically turn into you once you kind of get it over the tipping point, you basically can turn yourself into a wonder kid engine that produces bucket loads of South American cast-offs and that land on the San Marinese national team, and at some point you become good, and the whole thing kind of becomes good enough that you're doing it with I'll call it a more of an immigrant model. And that's basically what I used in Andorra, and it works perfectly fine. There's no objection. I mean, that is a very very viable way of accomplishing that save. It's just that I did it. I had done it with Andorra, so I didn't want to do it the same way. So right now the mission I'm on is I'm doing Victor San Marino, so I'm in the Italian pyramid. Um, so can take advantage of Italy's youth ratings and all of that. And my goal is to obviously build the club into a super club and get maximize all of the investment in, and then I want to start to see that can I start to develop world class San Marinese talent out of the club based in the Italian system, and ultimately take the San Marino national team to um, a World Cup and a European Championship title. That's a long, long way off. I think I'm on my seventh season right now, so we're in Serie B right now, kind of mid-table after about a month and a half. Um, Newly promoted there, so we spent 3 years in Serie D, and eventually won that and got out. And then spent 3 seasons in Serie C, and actually won Serie C to get out. We were in the playoffs the prior 2 years, but that's just miserably hard. The lower league, if you want a bit of a wonky set of rules and a supremely difficult challenge, pick any lower tier Italian side and work on getting them up to Serie A, because between the registration rules, the rules for ages for players you have to field, and the playoff structure, like it is hard. Um, so we're in Serie B right now. I feel we're kind of mid table. I think I'm eighth, eighth or 10th after the last match day. I think we're on 6 or 7 match days into the season. Starting to get a little more difficult. A lot of big sides in there. So, Spal, Sampdoria, Como, Benevento, um, Cremonese. So a lot of what I call like Serie A yo-yo teams, kind of hanging out in there. So probably going to take a couple of seasons to get up to Serie A, and then once I get there, that's when the hard work starts. So get in, get a foundation, start to slowly invest in the clubs. My general take, and certainly worth getting your input on it. The way I approach these is um, a lot of regular facility investment first, just so that I can use that as an attraction for players, and then um, also just maximizing the players that I have and getting the most out of them, so that I can progress up. And then youth is the last piece of the puzzle. So I figure I'm probably on a 12 to 15 season arc to at least being at a point where I can look at and say, okay, is the club actually producing the kind of talent that I'm looking for? And then we'll go from there. So, and no editor involved. I've never bought the editor. I've never used the editor, so I'm doing this. The only thing is, it's just a custom database to get Victor San Marino
Yeah,
uh,
based on the
out of the
fourth
mix.
tier. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but otherwise, yeah.
I think the because me and you have discussed this before, where one of the biggest differences I think between myself and you is I am more than comfortable to sit in the fourth tier for 5 seasons if it means I can somehow play my whole youth team instead and sell every single first team player who's not from the nation. Um, which I'm very historically famous for completely dragging out series due to this fact. Um, I think a good example is, and it's a totally different, obviously, structure, but with FC United Manchester, um,
Mhm.
starting obviously down in the Vanarama National League North, so a lot further down in terms of the amount of promotions needed. It I've done FC United Manchester twice on two different channels, the FM Central, then my old Northman channel before it got deleted. And both times it took me 5 years to get out of the National League North. And both times, by the time I won promotion, we'd already upgraded our youth facilities twice. We were already well above everybody else in youth facility level, and I had about 6 of the 11 starting players were from my academy. And I remember the last one I did, the last FC Manchester save I did, we were in our 8th or 9th season by the time we got to League Two. So I think once we went up into the National League, I think I went up again after about 2 or 3 seasons. But then it was about 5 seasons and then 5 seasons again to go up, etc. But by the 8th or 9th season, we basically had one of the best youth facilities in the country. And I think within about 2 years produced 4 or 5 players who were then wanted or went to Premier League clubs. And at that point, I'm a League Two side producing basically Premier League quality players. And I think if I remember correctly, because this save unfortunately was on the Northman channel, which went, so I couldn't watch that one back. I think I had about 9 or 10 of the starting 11 were all academy players by the 8th or 9th season. Now, for me, that surpasses any trophy. And this is where I think I differ to a lot of people, where like I look at people and I think, wow, you make it to the Champions League group stage in the 7th or 8th season. I wish I could do that. But then I sit down and start playing a save, and I almost hamper myself to the point where I can't achieve that, because if I'm in Andorra in my 7th or 8th season, I'm still playing academy players who were 15 years old in the Champions League because he came through and had cool sideburns. So it's yeah, it's I've tried to almost adapt my level of playing, but I guess if I look back at the Egerson save we've just done on the channel of Build a Nation, the amount of academy players I had in that team in the first few seasons shows that I still don't learn. And I guess if I look at my team now, I've got Football Manager open on the other screen. Let
I
me.
guess what like probably one of the other big differences I remember, like for me, right, the clubs and the accomplishments of the club stick out.
Hmm.
I only really like of all the years I've been playing, I've had one player that absolutely stands out in my mind, like one that I always remember, and if I could ever figure out how to replicate and find it, find him again, I would in a million years. Versus like to your point, right? The trophies, the accomplishments, the promotions don't stand out. But my guess is you've got a hall of players that stand out to you from your play.
Yeah, and I think like if I load up now as we are talking, I would like to find a way to put it on the screen for people whilst. Yeah, okay, so on the screen now, if you're watching on the YouTube version of the podcast, there is a screenshot of a player called Bram Ellison. Now, me and Colin have had various back and forths about this player. Because, as you can see, we'll go through it. So, he came through my intake in the 2015-16 season with FC United Manchester. He was with me for the 5 seasons in the National League North, 1 season in the National League Conference. Then we had 3 seasons in League 2, 3 seasons in League 1. Then we went up to the Championship where we got relegated. Then we had 5 seasons back in League 1 before we went up to the Championship again. Then got relegated. Then back up to the Championship. Now, this is a prime example of what I would say sums up my type of journey. Where I played... This player was with me for almost the whole journey. I think we ended up running out of time a season or 2 after, because he actually became a coach at the club after that. But he was with me from the intake, and he averaged over 741 league appearances for the club. He averaged 7.35 average rating. That is absolutely insane. Like, that is absolutely insane that a player can average that kind of average rating and still get abused by Colin for being bad.
Because he was.
I'm now on the YouTube podcast. You can now see his attributes. So when he retired age 35, okay, he had dribbling of 8, finishing of 7. He had a first touch of 12, heading of 4. He had marking of 11, passing of 17, penalty taken of 13. He scored 101 goals, by the way. And that's because I had him as our penalty taker for like 15 years. Tackling of 8, so he couldn't tackle. He had work rate of 15. Teamwork of only 8, by the way. But basically, like we always made this joke back in the old days, he had one job. Sit in the middle of the pitch. In the middle of the pitch, he would just sit, and all he had to do was pass the ball. Get the ball, turn, pass it forward. Get the ball, turn, pass it forward. That was his only job. But I think
he was your Pirlo.
Well, I think when you look at this, Colin, that we are 10 years into the future, and I still have them screenshots on my computer. We are 10 years into the future, and we are still discussing that player. It shows that sometimes in a journey, you just have them players who continue to impress. And also, my manager profile on the journey I'm doing at the minute is Lee Simpson. He was also from that exact journey, from that exact world. We had Bram Ellison and you had Lee Simpson. Lee Simpson, I think, played about 500-600 games as well. So, them kind of journeys. But I think I have to look back at my Egerson journey on this year's Football Manager was fantastic. Obviously, if we knew FN26 was going to be delayed, FN25 was cancelled, I'd have continued with Egerson and we'd be 50 years in now. But I think looking back, Colin, on FM23, I have to say potentially was my greatest ever journey with AB from the Faroe Islands. The fact that I watched back the episode where I say goodbye, and in that I load up the first ever save file from day 1 when I joined the club. We then go back through players of the year from every single season. We look back at signings. We look back at the fact that when I took charge, they'd only ever won the second tier once. And when I left, we had 35 league titles, 28 cups, a Europa League, and a Champions League to the name. And we had players who had played 140 games and scored 180 goals. Players who'd played 70 games, scored 90 goals. We also then had midfielders who had played like 400 games for the club. So I had players who were with me for 15 seasons, players who were with me for 18 seasons. I also had players who had only been with me for 2 years, but we'd signed them for 4 million, for example, and sold them for 90 million. I had a player called McCabe who I had for 2 years, paid 4 million, sold him for 80 to FC Cologne, and he ended up becoming the best player in the world. And that player had come through playing for my club in the Faroe Islands. And I just think the only negative is the fact that the database, which I made myself, but unfortunately there was something wrong with it, which even when I went back into the database trying to work it out, players were not gaining nationality. Even though they had the ability to gain it, they'd qualified, they'd been at the club for 10 years, they had to be in the country for 7 to gain nationality. It Where it says awaiting paperwork, it just never came back. So I don't think there's anything I could have done different in building a database for that. But it almost ruined the fact that I had players who could have then qualified for the national team and took that national team to the next level.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I would like to replicate something along that kind of journey, but I don't know. It's difficult because when FN26 comes along, Colin, there's new leagues going to be added. I've heard rumours of Lithuania. That could be something interesting for both of us in terms of the type of journeys we like to do. I've also heard a rumour that this league, which is going to rival the MLS, might be appearing.
Oh, the USL.
Yeah, with the promotion and relegation, that could be fantastic to watch.
Absolutely. I'm on a side note, I'm deeply excited to see that, and I genuinely hope uh it it really rivals MLS
Well,
and really forces a real reckoning, but that's a topic for a whole
a
different day.
lot of MLS games land at quite a good time over here. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the evening. So if they can get good television coverage on it and you are watching a promotion battle in the second tier, a relegation battle in the top tier, and it's in America where you already have that draw, like I want to watch a team from Texas, I want to watch a team from Florida, you want to build them relations with these clubs. I think it could be fantastic, I really do. I think the fact that they have said promotion relegation is coming, we are going to rival, we are going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm excited for that. But like you say, that's if that appears in Football Manager 26 as a playable league, wow, is all I'm going to say. Wow. I do worry because I think are the MLS rights, they are in Football Manager, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do worry that might put a block on them agreeing with almost a rival, if you know what I mean. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's not it's generally not a very friendly relationship between the USL and MLS. They tried for a while. And again, this gets into a lot of the nuance of how MLS is really constructed, but it was built and designed to be a very insular feeder league into the US national system, as opposed to being a true um like real pyramid type system. USL is trying to be a real functioning top level pyramid. I think there's a lot of appetite for it, especially coming in now. Obviously we've got the Club World Cup here in a few months, and the World Cup here, fingers crossed, next year. Um, there's obviously a lot of energy and a lot of momentum to capitalize. So I think it's a good time. I'm not sure there's long term room for both. I think for now there is, and we'll have to see where it all goes. But yeah, it would be a blast to play it, and hopefully I assume somebody will put together a custom database to get it in there, which may be fun to mess around with. But yeah, no, I love the little places. Those are the underdog story.
Yeah. Can I ask a question to end the podcast, which has nothing to do with Football Manager?
Sure.
Teams from this league. So I guess like the likes of Sacramento, that team sticks in my head. They are going to be in this league, right?
Yeah.
But if they then get welcomed into the MLS, will they then leave that league? Because I know clubs seem to get
Yeah,
welcomed in, don't they? Like, how's that going to work if they're rivaling?
yeah. Well, because a lot of money changes hands. As the
Do
thing
you
works.
think
So
they'll
MLS,
almost like they'll say there's an MLS franchise going to come to the town or city of Sacramento, and that means that there'll then be two teams there?
I suspect you'll see that in some markets. Sacramento, maybe not, but especially major markets, I think you'll see it, and they'll start to rival. So your Chicago, LA, San Diego, um, New York, Boston, Florida, Miami, Orlando, Charlotte, Atlanta, like major areas. I think you'll see because they have the population to support
Right.
multiples. Um, Interestingly enough, what I think USL does a much better job of, because MLS is very big market focused. USL has teams all over the country, so they've already got a pretty good blanket system for lower markets.
Yeah.
Um, I think the question, the fundamental question is, and USL has been very open on following a more traditional European model for how they play it, and they've had a handful of I guess you would call them quote unquote high profile transfers. So you're talking multi-million-dollar transfers out of that league into European leagues,
Hmm.
mostly like championship level type sides. Versus MLS, which has made um, Premier League level um signings. Miguel Almiron is probably the most
Yeah.
famous MLS product that's moved um into Europe. Not even an MLS product. He was MLS plucked him out of South America, but USL's had some like championship level stuff. So there is a good level of talent there, and they've got a good grassroots. I think the question is, making sure that things stay financially viable for all the clubs. I'm particularly excited because I'm in the middle of two USL um, sides. So the side that Didier Drogba is a part owner of, that he finished his career playing at, the Phoenix Rising, is plays out of Phoenix, Arizona, about an hour and change north of me. And they're in the process of building a whole new stadium complex up there. They're a current top tier USL side, and then here in Tucson, Tucson FC is, they actually dropped down to they're a USL League Two, so they actually went down to kind of amateur status, mostly for financial viability
Yeah.
reasons. Um, Here, but so we've got a couple of League Two, New Mexico, which is not far from me, El Paso, the El Paso Loco. Um, they're a USL championship, so there's a fair bit of it in the country. So
But
I'm really excited, but yeah,
this means you will be able to almost settle on one of them teams to start to follow a little bit, and then you end up maybe following a promotion charge and all of them things, which I think is just going to be great.
well, it's a ton of, like, to me it adds a, like, I get that there, and part of MLS's pieces is that the amount of money to buy into the league um, is massive, and the last thing they want to do is have an owner put $100 million at risk. But I mean, it happens in the Premier League all the time. Um, but I'm like, to me, part of MLS, like, the tail end of the season in MLS only gets interesting because, assuming a supporter shield isn't in play, like the end of the playoff spots, like, but if you're finishing last, like, who cares? I couldn't tell you who finished at the bottom, and there's nothing interesting, and there's no compelling reason to watch any of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So seeing exactly how they implement it, and like really seeing, if they do, like, call it, I'd say call it the straight, like, British pyramid, which, three up, three down, versus a, like, two up, two down, and a relegation playoff, something like that could
Hmm.
be almost like a Bundesliga model, or even like a Syria, like an Italian model in that sense. Could be really compelling, and it would bring so much more viewership to the full spectrum of sides, which would be a lot of fun. But I'm excited. It's something We talked years and years ago. I've been a vocal critic of the lack of promotion and relegation in MLS. I understand why it doesn't exist, but I think it was a mistake to not have it, and now it's a very, very insular system that's creating problems in the U.S. football landscape between the U.S. Open Cup and where national team players are really getting developed and how all that's working. And I think it's a system fighting against itself. So I'm hopeful that a more traditional pyramid and the right kind of time and sustainability will eventually really produce the quality that we should be producing.
We can dream. We can dream. But that's it
And
for our
2026 is coming fast enough.
that's it for us reminiscing on previous football managers and just chatting about what we think about when we think of Football Manager. So unfortunately, Colin, this means you're going to have to get back to work.
Probably does.
I'm going to record an episode of my Let's Play series, so then on Thursday night I can sit down and just continue playing. And we have been Paul and Colin, and this has been Dictate the Tempo.